Good afternoon, everyone. Okay. Ooh. It's time. It's time to start. Okay. Pete, you're being a disruptive influence. Yeah. Okay, so welcome to the final session of the day. You may be surprised to know that the plan for the next 3/4 an hour or so is to harness your brain power to help us get over a hump, which we may or may not have. And you also need to know that I've got a dental appointment in Liverpool at 5 o'clock. So whatever happens, I'm leaving this building at 5 to 4. So we need to crack on and make sure that we actually keep to a timetable at some point during the day, I think. Okay, so this is the meeting of the person-centered complex care theme. I'm Tony Marston. I'm the lead for this theme, and I'm sure many of you know that because I know many of the faces in the room, and we've also got a group of people online. I think there are just as many people online as there are actually in the room. So I'm going to give just a very brief introduction with a few slides, and then we're going to break into small groups. So we've got possibly 3 tables with 3 questions to address and think about, and give us feedback as to how you think we get over this road hump, or you might actually think we don't have a road hump at all. So it'd be good to get your thoughts about that. And we've got a group of, am I causing the echo? Sorry, I thought I'd turn those off. So the people online are rapidly turned off because there's an echo. I wonder if I just turn my speaker. Yeah, I was trying to multitask, and men just can't multitask, can they? So the plan was to have my headphones and everything set up for the small group online that I'm going to manage on this occasion. There's still some feedback, isn't there? Okay. Yeah. No feedback. Okay, right. Okay, just take me about 5 minutes to log back on again to sort it out. Okay, so we're not doing Epic, so I must be pressing the wrong button. Okay, so yeah, so I'm gonna have to lean over here to remind myself what's on the slides as an aid memoir. So we're going to focus on coordination and integration of care. So early on in COVID, we had some meetings thinking about what are the priorities for the PCCC theme, and one of the areas that came out was continuity and coordination of care, and I think that's an area that we're kind of wrestling with most. I've caused chaos by logging on. I'm going to find my laptop in a skip outside in a few moments. Okay. Oh dear, I was trying to be organized. We've always had problems trying to organize this, get this IT stuff right. Okay, right. So and we went through a bit of an engagement exercise with partners and the public, and had a few workshops, and around continuity of care, we identified some areas that we thought were important to address, like trying to work out what continuity of care is in the first place. How do we measure it? What are the important outcomes? What are the impact of integrated care models, as we had integrated care models that were coming together, and I think both of our integrated care boards are integrated care systems that are still kind of in storm and form mode, and there may be people in the room that are involved with that, and there's interest around advice and guidance, and I think Nefin, you're particularly interested in this area around advice and guidance across primary and secondary care. So we identified some broad areas that we were interested in, and if we look at this from a theme perspective, I think we look good on paper, actually, because on paper, we're kind of functioning as an arc in that we're bringing together a range of stakeholders and a range of academics across a whole range of institutions, and as PCCC, we've actually got quite a small core team, which is primarily me and Jenny at the moment, as we are, and Alan, sorry, just teasing out. Fully paid up members, I was thinking, and we've got a couple of public advisors, but in terms of full-time core staff, we're relatively small, and we have projects that are undertaken by partners, which are kind of funneled through PCCC, in that they have kind of an affiliation with the ethos and what person-centered complex care theme are trying to do, but we don't necessarily have a great deal of involvement with many of the projects, and that might be the right thing to do, but it'd be good to get your thoughts about this. So what we've got on the slide here is an example of some of the projects that are registered with ARC that have a continuity and integration of care feel about them. So we've got a big program grant, the Renal HF project, which Jenny and others have spent quite a lot of time on, which is trying to understand how we monitor and keep people's renal function safe when they're being treated for heart failure. We've got Activate. I think Nefin, this is one of your projects around a controlled trial Activate Your Heart therapeutic evaluation, probably on the boundary of, pardon? Cardiac rehab for angina, and I think that is in the kind of the boundary of kind of continuity of care and care provision. We've got a small program grant, very grand, called a program grants, undertaking reviews, trying to inform how we deliver care to people with epilepsy. We've got a project called RADOS, which is working across acute care services and with ambulance teams, trying to improve their training and ability to manage people with seizures that they are going to in the community. We've got OSCAR, which is a project around structured reviews, and ACTIVE, which I don't recall, and this is so for those online, it's about improving function for people in primary care. So a range of projects that have got a feel to them. And we also, as you've heard earlier on, there are a number of internships in the ARC, and a number of these are affiliated to the person-centered complex care theme, and we have identified 3 of those which are relevant to this continuity of care and integration of care. We've had a project that was brought to us essentially by Peter, which is slightly embarrassing for me. It's an area that I've been worried about for a while, but a couple of public advisors have got partners who have dementia, and they're in care homes and they've had seizures. And the NHS is often quite ageist in the way that it manages and treats people, and both their wives had pretty poor care in the way that their care was integrated. And we've had a couple of workshops, and those workshops are attended by folk ranging from people in nursing homes, primary care, paramedics, emergency care, community geriatrics, and you realise that this is a problem which requires integration of care across a whole broad range of sectors, and that isn't happening at the moment. So we're working hard to drill down into what are the questions that we can reasonably address here. But it's taken us about 3 workshops to try and drill down to what it is that we think we can do reasonably moving forward. And there is a tension here in the people experiencing this problem want something done now, and they want things to change now, and that's completely understandable. But of course, there's a tempo to research, getting the data which underpins those decision making, and it highlights some of the challenges of kind of implementation research, because there are things that we have to do now to improve improve things and what is the research framework? Because, you know, if we spend 5 to 10 years doing some systematic reviews and working out what's the right thing to do, then we've missed a lot of opportunities. Meanwhile, the health service has to act to improve things. So we've got quite a lot of projects on the portfolio, but there's not a lot of stuff actually being led from the centre. And it'd be good to get your view as to whether that's okay. Does that matter? In that we're part of a very dynamic and very diverse ecosystem, and our role is to support what the partners want to do, or should we being more kind of directive and taking ownership of the problem as a theme? And if so, how do we do that given the relative lack of resources that we have? And one of the things that we're realizing is that in meetings like this and other fora, people are identifying problems that they want to be fixed, and there are research questions to address. But what we're really struggling to do is identify people to lead and take ownership of that research. So it's very easy to identify a problem, but identifying the people that want to solve that problem and lead the research is actually turning out to be quite difficult. And the question is that okay? Do we continue to do what the researchers are interested in, which is delivering what looks good on paper for PCCC, or should we be having a slightly different approach? So we'd like you on the table and online, when I find my laptop and log on again, to address these 3 questions. Why do you think this is? Why have we got this kind of mismatch between what the public want and what the researchers want to lead? How can we solve this? Question 2. And number 3, what resources do we have in ARC Northwest Coast, including the wider membership, to help? So hopefully an opportunity for you to chat about upcoming Christmas shopping and stuff, or perhaps trying to tackle this problem the last half an hour of this meeting. So we've got 3 facilitators. We have Jenny, Alan, and Pete, who is minding my laptop. So yeah, so if we've got 3 tables and a 4th group, I'm going to give you about 20 to 25 minutes to talk among yourselves and take it from there. So we'll have 2 tables. So Pete and Jenny facilitating.
Hello, can anybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Mm-hmm. Hello, can anybody hear me?
Yes, I don't know if you can hear me, Tony. Can Tony hear me?
Hello. Yeah, you can hear me. Okay, I can't hear you. Can okay, so you're all muted. So we've got our 3 questions. Why do you think we might have this problem? How can we solve it, and what resources do we have? But we can hear you fine, Tony. Thank you. Okay, right. So, and you can vaguely see me, although it looks like my camera has stopped working. So it'd be great if you could turn your cameras on if you're able to do that, and whether anybody would like to contribute to the conversation. Hopefully you're able to hear the introduction. So just again to recap, just thinking about why do you think we might have this kind of mismatch between what public advisors and others are highlighting as problems and what the researchers want to do, and the challenge of getting some leadership around these important problems. I am not sure whether I have frozen as well. Somebody put a thumbs up again to indicate you can hear me. Debbie, I can see you moving. Can you hear me?
Tony, I can hear you. I don't know if you can hear me though.
Does anybody want to talk? Anybody want to contribute to anything? Let me are people able to turn the microphones on?
Yeah, they should be able to. So it's
Hi, are you able to hear me? I don't think you can hear us.
And I lost everybody. Yeah, we're just struggling. We don't seem to be able to allow you to turn your microphones on. So the speakers are turned off, but should we? Yeah, I can't. Yeah, can you hear each other? Is it just me that can't hear? Yes, I think we can hear one another. Okay, so I can't hear them. How about now?
You can't hear.
Yeah, so that I think everyone's coming through. Can somebody speak?
Can you hear us now?
Yes, I can hear you. I'm just going to take my laptop somewhere else. It's just struggling to get sound through my. Really sorry about this. We were all set up and then we had to turn everything off because there was feedback in the system. Okay, right. So does anybody have any thoughts or anything that they'd like to contribute to the conversation?
I think Koza mentioned earlier that it could be pressures on the service that are one of the issues about getting people to get engaged with the with projects and come forward.
Pressure on clinical services is quite a significant problem, isn't it, at the current time?
And I think it just takes such a long time to put a grant application together, and it's not altogether very accessible for people who are practitioners as well. That it feels too academic, and the online systems are horrendous as well.
Yeah, so yeah.
I think also, Tony, I guess there's no guaranteed outcome, is there? You can put all this effort and work into completing a grant application, but there's no guarantee of success.
Yep.
So that also might be off-putting for individuals to get involved.
I think that's so. The conversation here is highlighting the kind of the opportunity costs for people working in health and social care, putting together grant applications which which take a long time. The systems are complicated, and there's no guarantee of success.
I think there's also the issue of the amount of resource you have as a theme, or all the themes have, to go and interact with people other than people we know who want to come and do pieces of research, to actually go out and get other member organisations engaged in the process. The ArcFest deliver to a certain population, but I don't think they deliver to everyone. And so I think that in the future we probably need to move to trying to find ways of engaging more with the member organisations with the limited resource we have. Yeah,
and have you given any thought about what that might look like from a Midas point of view?
Yeah, we have, and we're going to, with the 18-month extension, we're going to change the process by which Midas, well, this is the plan anyway, until Mark says no, is to change the way Midas works from being receiving things through a process, which can take its time, as we know, into us going out there and engaging with people through a process that we're developing now, to get them involved in small wins that then develop into bigger wins later on as part of a process. Well, and it's going to take a little while to evolve that, but it means that we're less reactive and more proactive in the way we go about things, to try and circumvent some of the problems that people have been saying here, in the delays in the process and the what they get out of it as a and not just as a reward in getting a grant application, etc., but engaging with them so they can see some benefit to their practice, and then broadening that out as part of a concept.
Yeah, yep. Be very keen to talk to you about that, Andy, from a PCC point of view. Anybody else have any thoughts about why it might be challenging to tackle some of these continuity of care problems from a partner point of view?
I wonder if, because obviously it covers so many different areas and services,
yep,
it's difficult for you to build networks because you're having to, there's such a spread.
Yeah, that's certainly a challenge, and certainly if we tackle it from kind of a secondary care point of view, it gets very disease by disease, as opposed to a primary care point of view, which may be more cutting across that. Does what I've said make any sense, or do you look at the world differently?
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
One of the things that we've been thinking about as PCCC is, how do we engage more effectively with secondary care organisations? Of course, the risk for me is that's where I've worked most of my professional career, so it's a place I understand most. So I need to be careful of that. But getting the secondary care organisations together and having some workshops on health inequalities and helping them understand the impact health inequalities having on their services, and trying to get some enthusiasm for research to tackle that. Any thoughts or comments on that?
Sorry, Tony, was that the second question? I missed a part of it.
Yeah, so I was just wittering on, really asking about workshops. So I guess it is part. We've kind of automatically moved on to the second question around solving the problem, which kind of stems on from the conversation.
Yeah, because I suppose for me, it's thinking about whose priority is it. So if there is a research theme, has it come from those clinical teams or those particular individuals within the sector that you're thinking of? So if it's within the NHS, for example, and a particular team, have they got a strong research priority? Because often I think if the interest is driven by the stakeholder, that's probably more likely to lead into interest.
Yeah.
as opposed to being a sort of an academic area of interest. And I think maybe it's identifying if there is a theme that's emerged from one, say if it's a practitioner, for example, or a doctor, whoever it might be in the clinical setting, if there are other colleagues that are interested in that theme.
Yeah.
Sort of gauge, how much interest and who has got some capacity. Because often you might find that people are interested in grants and will put their name forward, but really don't have much capacity to contribute.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think one of the challenges we hear is that one of the challenges that we're having is that the priorities have been identified largely by public representatives, and particularly around some of the challenges around continuity of care, and they are the questions that we're struggling to pick up and run with and get some leadership on from a research point of view.
Mm-hmm. I suppose it's finding that balance then, isn't it, of where that shared interest is, and I think that's been one of our challenges generally within taking some of the public advisor ideas forward, hasn't it, within ARC?
Yeah.
About who actually leads on those pieces of work.
Any other thoughts about approaches to solving the problem? Yes, should we move on to just thinking about what resources we have in North West Coast ARC, which will probably pull out some other thoughts about how we solve the problem? But
I was going to say, I think our biggest set of largely untapped resources in the ARC North West Coast are the members, and it's that, as sort of saying before, it's engaging the members and finding ways of engaging them that they see the benefit in what the ARC can help them deliver, as it were, that's useful to them. And I think it is the communication element. And I'm not sure we necessarily get our communication to all the relevant people by the nature of organisations, as we said, are so busy, that actually getting it to permeate down into the wider organisation, I think, is probably a great challenge. We may need to address that in different ways through the ARC's communication strategy, both in terms of things like newsletters and directed emails, etc. And the website, they're all fine, but they usually only go to a certain proportion of people. So we need to find ways around that to get them engaged, because while we have a core staff, it isn't sufficient to do everything that we probably want to do.
Hi Tony, it's Debbie. Can you hear me now?
Hi Debbie, yes, can hear you. Good to see you.
Taking me about 20 minutes to get my microphone working. I think one of the things that we're really bad at in general is going out to see people. I think they were just right just saying that surveys, newsletters and emails are great, but there's a huge population out there that don't look at anything like that. I go out on the Wellbeing bus in Lancashire and South Cumbria and Cheshire, Merseyside, and into the mosques and things like that. And I think that's what we've got to do. We've got to go out and get to the people that don't engage otherwise. And they're the ones that we need to, not just to listen to, but we need to hear what they're saying as well, don't we?
That's right. And there's also that kind of human interaction. I mean, you talk about the importance of human interaction, really, aren't you? And seeing the whites of each other's eyes, and having that conversation to make it real, and that needs to happen at multiple levels. I think not only with the public, but within our organisations. And of course, the challenge is how do we do that most effectively with limited resources and people. And is there a snowballing way that we can do that?
I think we need to team up with other people and other teams, don't we, rather than trying to work in silos. So I work with Selena and some of the others at the ARC, and if we're working together, we've got a group of patients, we've got 2 groups of patients, and we go out, and Selena and the others have all got groups working with them. So rather than trying to recruit every time for different things, we need to be working smarter and working together. The ICBs have got PPI groups, so all these people are out there and we're all going out, but we're all going in different directions. We need to sort of pull together and work together a bit more and a bit smarter, I think.
Yeah. Anybody else want to contribute to this part of the conversation? Sorry, my camera's not working. I think you're the only one with a functioning camera, Debbie.
It took me long enough to get my microphone working, so maybe nobody else can get the microphone working.
I think our
I found there's a little padlock at the top of the screen near the address bar, and you have to click on that and unlock everything.
Oh, right. Well spotted.
I googled it. I didn't spot it.
I wonder if, just picking up on Debbie's point about engaging with the wider members and different individuals, is that when we're thinking of our research priorities that have been identified by the public advisors, it's trying to find out what the interest is from the other members. So I'm thinking of, like, you mentioned the ICB, for example, that where do some of these research priorities sit within the wider health and social care landscape? And then there might be some interest more broadly around it. Yeah,
and we've tried over the past 3 years really to kind of work with the ICBs, both in Cheshire and Mersey and in Lancashire and South Cumbria, but I think that they've continued to be in flux and evolving, and I'm not maybe the time's right to have another real hard push at that to get those relationships working. I don't know if there's anybody on the call from an ICB that would want to comment on that, because there are some really important research questions and implementation questions for the ICBs as they're evolving and want to move forward, surely.
Yeah, I think everyone's floundering a little bit. I was on a call with one of their engagement leads in Lancashire and South Cumbria this week, and they don't really know what their remit is yet, do they? They, they've been formed, and they're doing work, but they haven't got a strategic direction yet, I don't think, properly.
Mm. But I think they're kind of formulating areas of priority.
Yeah, I mean, I work for the Innovation Agency, as you know, and we've got national priorities from the Office of Life Science. We're working on maternity, neonatal and mental health, and all the other national priorities. And I think eventually hopefully we're all going to be working on the same ones and not all given different ones, because that way we can collaborate and work together. If we're all working on different things, we're not going to achieve very much alone, are we? It's
true. So I think we reached the point where I draw this to a close for this part. I'm sorry the IT experience again hasn't really been ideal. I thought we'd have cracked it by this point, but I realised that this part of the session hasn't been great because we couldn't connect and we can't see each other. I'll feed that back because we've had quite a lot of Zoom meetings which haven't worked, but we've never really managed to get it working properly at the ArcFest, I'm afraid. So I will take that back to the team. But thanks for your contribution and patience. I will leave and head back into the room.
Just a few minutes for that. So which table shall we pick on first? Yeah, okay. So Jenny, Sandra, excellent. Okay, right. So
Sandra didn't volunteer. Sandra was volunteered. So let's get that straight. Okay. we sort of went around all the different questions and we just sort of come up with some ideas. And we were talking about, some people get involved with projects and then they walk away and expect, the team to just take the project right the way through. And we need to sort of engage others. I'll mention that a bit further down. But what we were saying is about, we also don't know about our internal expertise. So we don't know the connections that there are with the members, with the researchers, with the public advisors. And when we should be working more sort of collaboratively, I can never say that word, on what we are, what is actual ARC membership, what is ARC about. And sometimes we think we're working in silos. So we talk about maybe creating forums to build teams that fit in with each other and bringing different expertise in. We're looking about getting future researchers from undergraduates, getting them early in their career, getting them, grassroots research. So it could be involved in interviews, in literature searches, hands-on experience, because we were initially talking about sort of undergraduates and we're talking about sort of trainee nurses, and they're already sort of trying to do 13-hour days and doing the dissertation. And so it's when do we try to get people involved in the research? And again, we mentioned about sometimes it's about the timing, it's about overload of work. And we're saying that maybe understanding research, what it's about, how you do it, should be part of sort of the curriculum. Now, whether you're talking about sort of, 16-year-olds or undergraduates or, for example, from the Festival of Social Science, we found from a college that what they're actually learning is things from about 5 years ago. So they're not actually even up to date on learning about equity. It's all about sort of inequalities. We've said about, we need to give maybe students some of the resources to actually get involved in research. And maybe they don't want to get involved in research, but they just might want to get involved in implementation and dissemination. And then we talked about the many projects and need evaluating. And this is to produce outputs and even improve the skills of the researchers, the people that are doing implementation. And it's about knowledge brokering. So I think one of the questions was, how do we get people to lead on these projects? And I don't really think we came up with an answer as such. We talked about getting the teams and working through the teams. But I think, well, I personally think in some ways ARC's working in a bit of a silo. So we come to these events and we find out what people are involved in, and then we go away and don't hear anything for another 3 months. And I think maybe the newsletter or the internet should be maybe different, updating on these are the projects. We talked about the PPP from the old days and how that used to work. Maybe that's a different way, an old way of maybe looking at getting leaders. Jenny, any thoughts?
I think you've covered it, really. I know we talked about undergraduate students and potentially, programs led by us, where you could, that's tapping into a resource as opposed to tapping into leaders. And we did talk about the potential for the development of more research development networks, but that might still not be the most efficient way. But I think that you've covered most things that we talked about.
Thanks. I'll stay here in the camera view. Otherwise, the guys online are looking at a bit of a blank screen. I think. So we covered some of the same things, and I also struggle to multitask, pressing buttons on the computer, writing, and trying to find somewhere quiet once the wind was blowing my piece of the paper all over the place. So we started off just thinking about the environment that people are working in our partners, quite stress and pressured environment. So perhaps it's not surprising that they struggle with time and then that might actually be quite a stressful time at the moment. And highlighting that the research process for people that aren't necessarily doing it all the time, it can be quite an unknown, and also there's no guarantee of success at the end of the day. So they might see that kind of mountain of having a research application to pull together rather complex online forms that frustrate even those that have been using them for a long time. So you can see why there might be a number of barriers, particularly if people feel that they haven't got a team around them. We moved on to talking about challenges with resources, which we kind of highlighted at the start, and it is difficult to get that engagement and communication with limited resources. And we had a bit of a conversation about how to engage and what our models will be. I think Midas have been thinking about what their models should be, because I presume Andy's happy for me to just speak. Of course, I've got the privilege that none of the online people can tell me that I'm saying absolutely nothing that they put forward, but feeling that we're very reactive at the moment, and how do we actually be more proactive and more structured in the way. When we started with Clark, and again with ARC, we were very reactive because we felt the pressure to get stuff done, and but now we've got a lot of stuff in the machinery, and there's ARCs and Clarks have always had a degree of chaos around them, and there continues to be a degree of chaos, if I could be so bold. And how do we be more structured and more proactive in the way that we're getting stuff organized? There was a question about, well, if we've got to think about priorities, whose priorities are they? And some conversation around how do we engage with members. And I think you highlighted the newsletters and stuff. It's all very good, but there's not a lot of human umph and interaction in that, and it's going to require a fair amount of human interaction. But there's a lot of people, so how are we going to prioritize and organize that human interaction? And we know that it's through talking to people and working with people that we can enthuse others and make things happen. It's very difficult to do that with emails and other forms of communication.
Get it on the comms subgroup agenda.
Yeah, yeah, and I realise that comms is absolutely, and comms is really difficult here, isn't it? But communication is fundamental to how we bring things together and make it happen. And then I can't read my last comment, so I will hand over to Pete.
Oh, thanks. So I think we got 5 minutes. Is that right, Tony? Before you have to go to the dentist. Otherwise, it's going to end up like Marathon Man. Otherwise, that won't be much fun. That's one for the older people, I think. Yeah. So we touched on many of the same things that you've mentioned. So one of the things that we did mention was that engagement with member organisations is sometimes lacking, and how we do that. So that is something to think about. In terms of collaborations, not also just with the members, we thought within ARC itself, within the themes, that there's not necessarily linkages being made that could be. So I mentioned the fact that CHI now, the Care and Health Informatics team, have got to that point where they've got a lot of access to data that they didn't have in the past, and essentially there's any disease area could be served by data, I think. So there's things for that. But we did say what would be really useful. I don't know how easy this is to actually get together, but basically a repository, almost like a database of individuals, funding calls, and areas of interest within the ARC, so we can better align, signpost, and collaborate. So if something comes up, we know who we can go to, because there is, I think we all do appreciate a lack of staff across to help with this. The fact that you've got this sort of like areas of interest, I think which is great, but I don't think we should be God, it's been a long day, sort of stymied by that, and we could go for other things. So maybe work things up in the background that are relating to those, but also focus, like Nefin said, on the NIHR Commission calls that are coming up. So if something works there, and also it was mentioned about the James Lind Alliance. So that's also sort of patient public led, not necessarily our public advisors, but it will fit. I mean, they're going to be representative of people as a whole. So we should look for things on that. Members are potentially disadvantaged by not having sort of research infrastructure or knowledge of that. Proactive use of theme co-leads. There's a lack of a holistic approach, sort of physical and mental health being looked at as two separate things that we should maybe be looking at as more together. I think that is about it. Anything else from anyone? Repository, I'll just say repository, and the repository of the individual. So it's not that hard. Surely we can just get, if we can just, the hardest thing will be getting people together in a room for one day where we can just get key people within the ARC who can design and access database. We don't need to pay a company to reinvent the wheel. We can just get that, and we just know, we'll know who we can go to, and you know who's got capacity. It sounds easy. I know it, you know, it might not be, but surely it's not. Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of knowledge amongst a lot of really good people here, and it just needs a way of being harnessed, I think. Okay, thank you. It's time mic drop.
So I think there are some key messages there, aren't there, for us to reflect on and take away. I think starting at the end there, we've got a lot of talent and know-how within the ARC, but do we understand what that is, and do we bring people together and allow us to make the best of ourselves? And the answer that might be not quite yet, and a repository and other things can help us with that. We have the challenge of thinking about how do we best manage our limited resources, and there are some key things around communication. How do we improve communication around the ARC, which will facilitate us to be the best that can be? I think were the key things that stuck in my head having listened to that feedback. Pete, could you give Jenny bits of paper, and because we'll need to. Are there any key things that I didn't mention there in the summing up, do you think? Any other key messages? So it's, who are we? How do we communicate, and how do we best manage ourselves? We kind of fly by the seat of our pants all the time, though, which you've just witnessed 3/4 of an hour of us flying by the seats of our pants. And okay, is Alan? Alan's gone, right? Okay, right. Okay, right. I hope I didn't upset him. He's yeah, just teasing. Okay, well, thanks all for your inputs. Hopefully that woke you up prior to your travel home, and I hope the train strike hasn't made that more difficult than it should be. Yeah. Yes. Thanks.